Welcome to the Scaleup Valley podcast, where we bring the best of the best to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. This is a very special edition. It's the Scaleup Valley Asia, Southeast Asia edition. And that's why I'm with my co-founder and co-host, Andrew Wong. Andrew, welcome again.
Hi, thanks, and great to be back again for this coming edition. And looking forward to have a very interesting session today.
Thank you. And one of the first episode was with Jason, the CEO of Staff Any in Singapore. The second one with Nina, the CEO of Zopa, also based in Singapore. And I'm excited to say that we have the first CEO coming from the Philippines, and his name is Georg, the CEO at BillEase's. Georg, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi.
It's really a pleasure, and especially because the previous two companies were at Series A, raised the Series A before. In your case, you are a little bit more mature and advanced at Series B at this stage. But let's get to know more about you and about BillEase's.
Sure. So I think in just one line, BillEase's is buy now, pay later plus platform or app. We basically help customers here in the Philippines buy things on installment that they need. It's a bit more involved, I would say, than say the Afterpay, Klarna, like more developed market models, because here in the Philippines, a lot of customers don't have credit cards, so we have to basically build the entire stack ourselves. So I had to build that all ourselves. So from payments to underwriting, fraud control, and so on, right? On the flip side, then customers also can avail many more products. So we don't have just the buy now, pay later. We also then have other products inside our app. So they can get a cash loan, they can get a e-wallet loan, they can buy mobile load, and we're adding a couple of other features to it. So we basically want to move it to a more full-fledged financial service for our customers.
And I love kind of the mission and the vision around BillEase's. We have talked before, and you talked about the financial inclusion side around the Philippines. You'd want to share a little bit more about what you'd like to see with this in the long term.
Sure. Yeah. So, credit cards is often, or in many markets, kind of the first, say, a little bit more involved product that consumers would get, right? So the salary account and that pretty much everybody has, right? But then to build really the relationship with the banking system and build your credit score, that's typically the credit card, right? In say Singapore or Europe or US, right? And since here in the Philippines it's quite restrictive still, there's just a lot of customers, like 95% of customers wouldn't be in the formal credit bureau or credit system, right? So every time they need something, they need to go through the whole underwriting process, and it's quite burdensome for them. So what we want to do is we want to underwrite these customers at a stage where banks cannot really serve them, or credit card companies cannot yet really serve them, and do so through a very automated and data-driven approach, right? So instead of asking a lot of documents and then having people review that, we use alternative data to score these customers, and then we give them a credit limit, and then over time they can build their reputation, right? And we are reporting also into the credit bureau. So we're one of the apps that's also reporting into the credit bureau. So that means that customers who basically use our app and repay on time and everything, they build their credit score, right? So if that customer then 5 years down the road wants to buy a car or an apartment or take a loan for business, they're not like a blank slate when the bank looks at them, right? So I think it's just a very nice way for customers to get into the system.
That's really amazing, because sometimes when we are in other parts of the world, we don't have this kind of issues to solve, right? And it's really important for people to live their lives and to have access to this kind of services. So it's really amazing what you are doing. Could you share a little bit more about, you have started in the Philippines, and I think that you are still focused in terms of scaling up in the Philippines, because we know it's a very large market. So considerations about ICP, your business model, your expansion strategy.
Yeah, sure. So I think Philippines, we have really barely scratched the surface so far. Philippines is market with more than 100 million people, right? And in addition to just having a lot of people, you also, or the market is kind of at that steep part of the curve where it flips into a middle income market, right? So I think that is something that defines actually quite a few of the markets here in Southeast Asia. And what makes it so exciting is that you have a very large share of the population that's just getting into this middle class segment, right? That then can have a long-term relationship with the financial institutions, that can do some banking, that has more or less stable income source and so on, right? And that's so not only is the market large, also that segment that the banks cannot really serve yet, but that is bankable if you do it in the right way, is growing much faster than the overall market, right? So I think we still have a lot of work to do here in the Philippines. The whole ecosystem is also developing very fast right now. So we started the business actually back in 2017, and back then there wasn't really much going on in terms of fintech. And now you have a lot of other players that came in. You have a lot of infrastructure that we had to build. There's other companies that are coming in that do it better, faster. Then of course we're very happy to work with them, because we want to focus really on the parts of the value chain that we're good at. Yeah, so I think in Philippines still huge potential. We're also looking at more products to offer, right? So right now we are focusing a bit more on the lending side. We're looking at offering also other products, financial products, and maybe even e-commerce types products to our customers. So could think of it like almost like a super app, right? But yeah, and then if you look throughout the region, I think there's a couple of other markets that are very interesting. Vietnam is actually looking very similar to the Philippines in terms of GDP per capita, in terms of at what development stage the market is in, right? So I think that's a market that we're looking at fairly closely. Indonesia would be also there, but there's already quite a lot of good solutions there. So yeah, that's that one we need to think about. And then even globally, right? I think if you look at say LATAM or even some countries in Africa, right? You would see countries that are at that stage. That's, I think, the sweet spot for this kind of service.
Yeah, just shout out for the episodes that we covered Belvo and Payflow in Latam, also fintech peers that are working on in the space, not in the same category. So might be also interesting to partner. Cool, and it's really good to see that the funding rounds are going up and up in the region, and not only in Singapore and Indonesia, but also in the Philippines, being the second largest market in the region, if I'm not wrong. Correct?
Yeah, so it's actually been super interesting. We spent basically the last year starting to talk to investors and then really going into the fundraising effort. And what we've seen is that the mood really shifted from the beginning of last year to mid last year. I think Philippines was more seen as a let's say frontier market, not core to most of the funds in the region and also globally. And I think then there were a couple of larger deals that happened, and then interest very quickly started to pick up, right? And if you look at the deals that got closed just this year, right, is I think more in terms of volume than in total before, right? So it's getting noticed, and I think deservedly so. Yeah.
And finally, exploring also the great opportunity as you are doing. I think it's always great when a scale-up is able to, make or build scale-up viable business, sustainable business, and at the same time have a strong purpose behind to serve a community and to change lives, right? So it's for me, it's always exciting than just launching their interesting software, but that will not change the lives of people in the region. So leveraging a huge opportunity. So let's go into the fintech playbook and what is working for you, and what has been some of the lessons learned along your journey. For instance, in order to raise your pre-seed round and your seed round, what has been some of the challenges and some of the lessons learned at that stage?
Yeah.
Maybe it was a long time ago, not in terms of years, but in terms of intensity of the years.
Yeah, it's been a while, and also with lockdown and pandemic and everything, the whole time actually perception changes, I think, a little bit.
Exactly.
But yeah, look, it was we started with very limited outside investment. So we had one seed and also then Series A investor, but we also contributed quite a bit of our own, and basically made sure that we build something sustainable from the get-go, right? And again, right, back then Philippines was not really on any map, so it wouldn't have been really possible to go out and raise, say, $1 million for just a seed pre-product or anything like that, right? So
right.
That forces, I think, to be a bit more frugal.
This was in what year, George?
We started in 2015.
Because things changed a lot in any ecosystem, and especially as you said, in the last 2 years, the playbook is completely different, right?
Yeah, but the time the ecosystem is still very, very infant, and fintech was totally almost non-existing in the Philippines. But how could you, as a foreigner coming into the Philippines, a very different market and very different kind of culture, different kind of nationality, how you manage to navigate through your startup journey to start a company in the Philippines and bring it up?
Yeah, so I had been in the market before. So I actually came to Philippines earlier in 2013 and was working with one of the banks here to transform the retail banking business. My previous work was in consulting, so I worked with banks in the retail and risk management space across Southeast Asia, so that was a good intro for me to the market, because I saw how banks basically do things, and it was still very paper based and very costly in terms of process cost, right? And if you're working from within the system, you can only push it so far, I think, right? And that's why we said, okay, if you were to build this from scratch, right, how would it look like? What kind of unit economics can you go for, right? Because if your process cost is too high, right, and say your process cost for a loan is 50,000 pesos, right, $1,000, and you say, okay, let's make it more efficient and like really push hard, right? So within the system, you can push it down to, say, by an order of magnitude even, right? You still are at a level where you can't make really small short-term loans, which is what a lot of the customers actually need, right? So it's just the way the processes are run and what the majority of the market requires did not match, right? So we said, okay, if you build this from scratch, can you do it better, right? And that was kind of the starting hypothesis. I was very lucky that I had two of my friends and colleagues from my previous job who joined me. So we actually three co-founders. And one of them is Filipino, so we had also a little bit the local knowledge, and as you say, right, navigating everything is of course a challenge when you're fresh to the market. Yeah, so that's how we got started, right? Yeah.
And by the way, the other member of the founding team is Vietnamese, right? And you are
Yes,
Austrian, right?
Yeah, I'm the odd one out, yeah.
But you have been in the region almost, as you said, kind of 15 years, right?
Yeah,
a long time.
I actually was based in Singapore before for a few years. So I worked out of Singapore for I think 7 years, and yeah, basically spent my weekends there. So really traveled, spent a lot of time in Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand. So got to see quite a bit of the region. And that also helped getting a bit of a perspective on what you can and cannot do in a market like this. Yeah.
So in terms of the VC industry and the experience as entrepreneur, you know much more about Southeast Asia than about Europe or the US at this stage.
Yeah. I spent my entire professional career here in Southeast Asia, yeah, or vast majority of it. Yeah.
It was a good choice because it's definitely booming, and we can feel when we are in the trenches a very different vibe compared to what we see, at least in Europe. The US is always exciting, right? In a certain way. Also the cultural side, without getting here into too much compromise on my side, but
Yep.
but definitely great. And going from C to A, so the beginning was kind of difficult, of course, as you were saying, to navigate the first round. And it was a very different world to have that kind of pre-product, almost raising the round with the idea and with a PowerPoint where you prove that you have a strong team, strong business opportunity, but later on, in order to raise the A round, you needed to have a little bit more to be in a good position to raise it, right?
Yeah. So we spent the first 2 years actually with two other products. So we started with a product that's really tailored very much to the local market, which is a loan for Filipinos who go work abroad. So a large percentage of Filipinos goes abroad, works abroad, and it's actually a big part of the economy here, the remittances. So and these loans are a little bit complex to do because there's a lot of foreign documents involved and things like that. So we that was one product we tackled in the beginning, and then we had another one that was a cash lending platform, okay, for small ticket short-term loans, right? So not quite payday loans, but so short-term loans. Now what we saw is that we can make the process work, but it's hard to scale with quality customers if you don't work with partners. And so that's why in 2017, so about 2 years after we started, we approached Lazada and said, hey, we can lend, right? We can make decisions very fast. We have good automation and everything. And there's very few credit cards in the market. You still do most of your orders cash on delivery, but we do something together, right? And they said, yeah, it's actually something we're looking at. And by the way, there's 5 other companies who are also working on that to get it launched with us. But feel free to also join, right? And so we said, okay, we'll do it. So and that was kind of the moment where we pivoted everything to that new idea. And that's how we started with BillEase's, right? So the first version of BillEase's was basically just working together with Lazada for their customers. We got that out in, I think, 2 or 3 months. So it was a pretty quick effort. And of course, not as developed and as stable as we would like it to be, and as it is now. But we got it done fast, and so we were the first to launch there. That's what got us started, right? And then we saw that this is working, right? So working with partners makes sense because you can cut your cost of acquisition, you get access to a better customer segment, and therefore you can make the product work with a much better interest rate, right? So we managed to get positive unit economics at a much lower rate, and then that's kind of where we said, okay, this product is nice, right? It's good for the customer, it's good for scaling. So let's focus on this, right? And then we basically said, okay, if this is now really taking off, we will need a little bit more firepower, and that's when we went out and raised our first really more significant route from the outside. That was our Series A from a local PE / family office, and we managed to close that, I think, in end of 2017, right? End of 2018, yeah. So that's kind of where it really started to scale up.
You were able to show some traction with the first version with Lazada, to improve it, to iterate, and maybe to add a second partner already, or was necessary? Not necessary.
So back then we only had Lazada, and they were also the largest platform in the market by far. We basically then focused a lot on automation of the underwriting process. So initially there was still a lot of manual checks involved, right? We had our models and everything, but there was still some people looking at it, signing off on it. So that was our first push, automate that so we can scale up. Also, we tried to hire more people for credit underwriting. So that was our limiting factor in the first, I would say, 2 years, right? Because it restricted the number of customers we could onboard. That took a while because we had to get our data right. We had to iterate our models until we had like a level of confidence that we said, okay, more and more parts of the credit process we can basically switch to fully automated.
Right. I really like the focus here, and I think that's a great lesson, Andrew. I know that you have something to say, but just before, it's really focusing in just one partner, one solution, getting it better, iterating, having the foundations right before scaling up, and then you were able to raise the A round. Andrew, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, one of the, if I'm an investor, one of the major concerns that we have.
Wait, sorry, you're breaking up. Can you speak closer?
Okay. Yeah, I have a question. The question is, if I'm an investor, and I'll probably be looking at, in terms of the nature of your business, more about the NPL. That's probably one of the major concerns. How do you manage those NPL if they exist? Or you manage to find a way to reduce those, or maybe even make it non-existent in terms of NPL?
Yeah. So the way we think about NPLs, are actually more accurately about the cost of risk. This is basically cost of doing business. So we don't try to reduce it to zero or to some very low number. We have kind of a benchmark where we want to be, where we think it's optimum for growth and for performance of the business. And then the trick is really to make sure that for every customer who comes in, you're very good at estimating what is the likelihood of default, right? That's where we invest in our models and where we make sure that we really understand the customer when they get onboarded, so that we understand what is the likelihood of default. and then we can set the pricing, or at least the volume, in a way that we hit the right numbers.
Having said that, what do you think is the success factor that drives this organization into the success pathway? What will be that contribution, the success contribution?
The success of the business?
Yeah, the success factors that actually drive the pathway towards the success of the business.
Yeah.
Kind of the metrics that measure success, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are, I think, in terms of metrics, we look very, very closely at unit economics at a cohort level. Okay, so what I mean by that is, of course, your management reports and P&L and everything and headline numbers are very important, right? But to really understand if what you're doing, or to get a much faster view on what's going on with the business, I think you need to be very disciplined at looking at unit economics on a cohort basis. So I can now look back to, say, December, November vintages, right? I kind of know how customers we onboarded then are performing. So that's pretty much played out already. I know my onboarding cost, and I have a very good estimate of like long-term performance after the first say 2-3 months. And as long as that is stable or somewhat stable, and we can at the same time increase our rate of onboarding customers, I think that's when we're happy. Yeah.
Got it. And we are just missing the last bridge. So from A to B, or from the end of 2018 to the last round. So what did you need to prove in order to successfully raise the B round? Let's put it in that way. Maybe it's easier.
Yeah, so I think it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, to be honest. When so we were just kind of getting going on scaling up, because we took some time to get our automation to the right level, to get our risk models to where they needed to be, and also to work on the product, right? So we also then started with our merchant platform, so that we onboard more than just one merchant, right? Mm-hmm. So all of these things were kind of coming nicely into place, and then pandemic hit, right? And we went into a pretty strict lockdown here in the Philippines. So in March 2020, everything basically shut down. So even deliveries and everything was stopped, right? So you couldn't order in shops anymore, nothing, right? For the first few weeks. And people couldn't go to work, so they didn't get paid. So yeah, we had an interesting few weeks, let's put it that way, where basically business stopped, right? Not really stopped, like not completely stopped, but like everything like dropped like crazy, right? And then I think we saw slowly this whole situation recovering after 2 or 3 months. So maybe April, May, end of April, May started looking a little bit better, and then things opened up a little bit, right? So we had lockdown for like almost 2 years, right? But at least you could like order, people could go back to work, but it was still like all very restricted, right? So malls were not really open. Kids were not allowed to go to the malls up until I think a few months ago, right? And a big attraction of why people go to the malls, take the kids out for food and everything, right? So what in the beginning looked very bad then suddenly flipped into something that actually boosted our growth quite a lot, because customers started transacting online much more than before, right? And customer behavior is something that's very hard to change, or if you put it in economic terms, very expensive to change, because you have to spend a lot on marketing, customer education, and so on, right?
Love it.
And in this lockdown, I think everybody had to go online, right? Because it was just much more convenient to just order your things, right? Nobody wanted to touch cash, because initially they were also very afraid that the cash can spread the virus. So people started using e-wallets, right? Gcash, which is the largest wallet here, grew last year, 2021, 4 times. And their transaction volume is, I think it was 18 or 19% of GDP last year. So, and that's one e-wallet, right? So that behavior really changed to basically going from purely or like very heavily cash-based to much more digital transactions. I think what also fell in place were a couple of regulatory improvements, or not, let's say market infrastructure improvements. So there's now a way to transfer between banks instantly, which wasn't there before. So that also made it much easier for customers to transact online. There's now a national ID being rolled out. So that's actually a benefit that we still expect to see in the future, where it's going to be much more easy to do KYC on a customer. And again, take out friction. I think a lot of scaling is about taking out friction, right? So all of this came together, and suddenly, from basically a massive drop, we saw a pretty strong growth momentum. By end of 2021, our transaction volume was up 10 times versus beginning of the pandemic. And we are still, so that momentum keeps going, right? So we're still growing. Last year we grew more than 3 times, I think close to 4 times. This year we're on track to again grow about 3 to 4 times. Yeah. So
congratulations.
And since we are in the lending business, we are balance sheet business, that also then basically meant we have to find funding sources, and that's why we then raised or went out to the market and started talking to investors. Yeah.
Got it. So it's kind of in order to raise the A round was really proving that the first partnership with Lizaba was working out, right? And the B round was to prove that it could work with a better product, could work with different partners, and be a little bit more scalable, right? Because kind of product market fit was already proven.
Yes, I think basically the A was the product market fit, right? That was kind of proven, right? And then for this round, it was really scalability, right? So scalability with good unit economic stability.
Exactly. So the revenue machine, the repeatable, profitable, and scalable, right?
Yes.
I think BNPL came in at the right time. First, COVID kind of hit the expansion of BNPL. So you were there at the right time at the right place.
Exactly.
Yes. I think we were lucky also in a sense that we had done all the work before that put us in the position where we were at, right? And then you had this tsunami coming in of basically transformation of customer behavior, and we were in the right position so that we could surf it and didn't get like overwhelmed by it. Yeah.
Got it. And just quick insights, because we are getting a little bit short on time now. But what do you envision that you need to prove now in order to get to the next step? I know that it's always we can't predict very easily, but at least you have some hypotheses and some assumptions about what you need to prove in order to get to C.
Yeah, I think again, right? That's just my view, but I think it's scalability at another level. So I think, and I think we're kind of getting there, right? Where we say, okay, we did receive this investment and we did invest this in growth, and the market share that we bought with that is at the same quality than what we did before, right? So I think it doesn't change that much anymore in terms of topic, right? It's really, I think, just scalability at a different level, right? So maybe the second derivative of scalability. Yeah.
And maybe potentially a second geo, or not. Maybe it's not necessary. If it is not necessary, even better, right?
Yeah.
Less complexity, the best.
Again, right? I think even in Philippines, we're barely scratching the surface. There's still huge unmet demand. But yeah, I mean, if you look at our founder team, it's kind of clear where we're heading next. It's not Austria. Yeah.
Good one. For the one you need to come back and listen when George talks about his founding team.
Yeah.
But I guess even in what you are saying is it's not necessary, and maybe I confuse it, the audience here. It's not necessary to raise the C. Maybe the plans for the C or might include the second geo. Yes or not?
Yes.
It will depend.
It may. But I think even within Philippines, there's still a lot on growth potential. Yeah.
Exactly. So, which I think it's great. I think that's one of the mistakes that it happens in all regions in Europe and even in the US, where we know that scalability, because of being just one country, even having different cultures and different states and one language, helps a lot. Is trying to be everywhere, right? So opening 4 or 5 markets at the same time, I think that this happens everywhere. Even now that I've been talking a lot with, or not a lot, but in 2 episodes with Latam, trying to go to Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, all at the same time. That's really a huge mistake. That's because of this global ambition, we confuse sometimes the mid, the short, and the long term, and we confuse it with the long term vision, right?
Yeah. I think what's also very important is that markets here are still very different from each other, right? So you don't have a common regulatory framework like you would have in, say, Europe, right? So if you build something in Germany, most likely you can take big parts of this and port it to Austria, France, Spain, and so on, because it's all under a common market framework, right? That's not how things are here, right? So you have different regulatory environment in every market. You have pretty different stages of development, customer expectation, infrastructure, and so if you don't adapt heavily, I don't think you will be successful if you go market to market here. Yeah.
So we are almost getting into the final questions, which are a little bit faster. But before that, we know that nowadays building that the leadership team and having the right people on the right seats, and I would say even in every single position across the team, it's becoming tougher to hire high quality people and to retain them. So what has been some of your experience hiring the members of your leadership team? Do you think that the talent pool is now more experienced? What has been some of your tricks to be able to have that team with you?
Yeah, so it really depends on the roles, I think. So Philippines is still a market where the whole ecosystem is at an early stage, right? So you don't have like the 3-4 big champions who have built that bench of talent and that is now in the market and and available, right? So I think it's still a fairly thin market for startup specific, say, growth roles, some of the tech roles and so on, right? So we are looking also outside the market a little bit, which is now easier because you have, I mean, we are still working remote mostly, right? So it's actually quite easy to plug in talent from at least the region, right? From markets that are a bit more mature, right? That's kind of where we're exploring now. But of course, I think it's also important that you build your own talent. So I think we have a pretty strong culture of developing people in-house and letting people grow to the full potential that they have very, very quickly. Yeah.
So let's come to the final 5 questions. So which would be, if you would have a coffee with yourself at the beginning of your journey in 2015, what advice would you offer to your younger self?
Enjoy the ride. It's not always smooth, but in the end, it's fun and it's worth it. Yeah.
What are you the most proud of on this journey?
I think what I'm most proud of is that we built a very strong team. So I'm very happy with the team that we built and how people have stepped up and developed. Yeah.
Worst advice ever received?
You know, I have a pretty selective and short-term memory, so I don't really, yeah, I wouldn't remember that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Good for me. I need to work with more people like you. So,
yeah.
Favorite business book?
Favorite business book?
Or not? It can be.
I frankly don't read that many business books, to be honest. So if biographies count, I really like the one on Elon Musk. I actually don't remember exactly the author. Yeah. So I like reading biographies. The Walter Isaacson's on Steve Jobs I found very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. The biography of Elon Musk and Steve Jobs. So, and to close, favorite movie or series that inspire you?
Favorite movie or series? I like sci-fi, so I would say recent movies probably Dune. I like Dune a lot. Yeah. Perfect. Would hope to see it in proper theater.
Exactly. Andrew, any final remarks before we go?
No final remark, but one final question. Quick question.
Sure.
Long-term question. 10 to 15 years down the road, what will BillEase be?
Sorry?
10 to 15 years down the road, what do you think BillEase will become?
That's, I mean, things are changing very fast, right? So that's a hard question. But at least where we're heading is full-fledged financial services and maybe even more, right? So I think there's a huge opportunity to give customers very convenient financial services, not just lending, deposits, investments, transactions, everything out of one app. Maybe integrate even some e-commerce features, discovery, things like that, and scale it to biggest app in the market.
So you become a super digital bank.
Yep. Something along those lines.
Georg, thanks so much for joining us today. It was really a pleasure to host you on the show, and you are always welcome to come back to share your journey.
Thanks for having me.
And to our community, thanks for being there. As you see, we keep bringing you the best of the best to make your life a little bit easier scaling up. So see you soon and keep scaling.